Hello, I'm Vishan Chakrabarty, founder of Practice for Architecture and Urbanism, or POW for short. You're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guile. Every February, the modernist architectural world comes to Palm Springs, California. It's an 11-day architecture and design festival, yet they still call it Modernism Week. Again this year, U.S. Modernist Radio is there, interviewing nearly all of Modernism Week's keynote speakers plus special guests. It all happened at the U.S. Modernist Compound, a.k.a. poolside at the hip Hotel Skylark. As more and more mid-century buildings get destroyed, we have to turn to mid-century photography collections as both a window into the past and inspiration for the future. Today, we'll talk to Ethan Wayne, son of actor John Wayne, along with Laurie Kratochvil and Amy Shepard, about the John Hamilton Collection, a priceless trove of photographs from Hollywood's golden age. After that, we chat with the head colorist for paint company Dunn-Edwards, Sara McClean. She'll tell us how she keeps the mid-century color vibe alive. Finally, we'll hop back to North Carolina for a visit with jazz pianist Ariel Pocock. A few years back during Modernism Week, I got a craving for a Diet Coke and some pretzels. Fortunately, there's a 7-Eleven about 2 blocks away from the Hotel Skylark. So I took a little walk, and on my way to the 7-Eleven, I saw the strangest thing, a pedestrian walkway over Indian Canyon Drive.
Oh, Lord, here we go.
Now, in big cities, these walkways let folks go from one building to another without having to deal with snow or rain. But this is Palm Springs. It's beautiful all the time. After I walked under the walkway twice, there and back, I found out why it's there. It seems that there's a pretty big nudist resort, and some years back they had to expand the property. So how do you cross the street au naturel? You build what has become to be known as the Bridge of Thighs.
Oh.
It's fully enclosed and completely eliminates the need to get dressed to go out. Another reason that there's nothing like Modernism Week in Palm Springs. And there's nothing like Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Hey, thank you, Tom. When I go to Palm Springs every year, and it seems like I'm going for a little longer and a little longer each year, one of the best feelings is just arrival. Whether you're flying in over the desert into the Palm Springs airport or you're driving in on Highway 111 from L.A., you can just feel the stress pouring off your body. It's like this whole place is really made to take it easy, to relax, to enjoy the natural beauty, to eat some great food, to see some wonderful architecture, to take in the culture, to meet old friends. Really fantastic. If you'd like to go with me and Tom to Palm Springs in 2024 for Modernism Week and stay with us at the U.S. Modernist Compound, you can email me at george@usmodernist.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Palm Springs, Toronto, Los Angeles, and Malibu.
Ethan Wayne is the youngest son of the Duke, legendary Hollywood actor John Wayne. Ethan was often at his father's side, splitting time between Newport Beach, California, Wayne's yacht, the Wild Goose, and filming locations all over the world. Ethan is a former actor himself and also worked as a stuntman until, in 2003, he took over John Wayne Enterprises. In 2014, John Wayne Enterprises purchased the John Hamilton Collection from the Hamilton Estate. It's a trove of photographs taken by the legendary Hollywood photographer who chronicled 77 movies, many of them westerns featuring John Wayne. How about that? Join us now at the Palm Springs Convention Center for George's conversation with Ethan Wayne and 2 Hamilton Collection staff members, Laurie Kratochvil and Amy Shepard.
We're here in the Palm Springs Convention Center, when what the noise you hear in the background is lots of happy people hoping to part with their money and some beautiful, beautiful art and furniture and stylings all around the place. It's just a visual feast, isn't it?
It's great. Yeah, we're enjoying
I've been
this.
here 2 minutes, and I already like it.
He already bought something. Already bought a home.
I already bought it. Yeah. There's even a home outside. As you come in the door, you can buy a prefab.
We just went there.
Oh, you just went into it?
Yeah, we just
did.
walked through it.
Okay, yeah. That's pretty special.
Yeah.
So, Ethan, before we get started talking about John Hamilton, the last movie I saw of your dad's was The Conqueror, which
my
was
gosh.
really interesting.
Well, that goes way back. That was the Howard Hughes years.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that your dad had played Genghis Khan.
Yeah. I think it was his least favorite role, but he did it.
Yeah.
But you know what? He made a series of films for Howard Hughes, and one of those films is called Jet Pilot, and they filmed quite a bit of Jet Pilot here in Palm Springs.
Oh, really?
So you get a little time capsule of Palm Springs and Jet Pilot. if
Was
you
The
watch it.
Conquerors shot in?
St. George?
Oh, I
area,
thought-
southern Utah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Nevada.
No.
Okay.
Utah. But, you know, there was fallout from the nuclear testing.
That's what
and
I heard.
A lot of speculation about whether that interfered with people's health. Yeah. We don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a really great movie to watch late night because you just don't expect John
Well,
Wayne to show up as Genghis Khan.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
So you all are here to talk about the Hamilton collection. So I think most people haven't heard of John Hamilton, although they've probably seen his images. Who wants to tell me a little bit background about John?
For sure they've seen his work.
Now they have.
Yeah, for sure they've seen his work. Because, you know, the 300 magazine covers, he shot my father for the cover of Time. His first job as recording a film on location was The Searchers with John Ford and John Wayne.
Oh, sure. Famous
So
film.
really significant archive of photography, and just a guy who sort of flew under the radar. He didn't do a lot of self-promotion. He just loved what he did, and the content of his archive is unbelievable. And so it's exciting for us to be here and be in front of, a large audience of people who appreciate architecture, design, style, photography, because it's like an unearthed archive. And it's very significant. I mean, we're talking none of it digitized, all of it on negatives, silver gelatin prints, and he's a guy who took notes on most of his photo reels. So you'll see a picture of Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra, and there'll be a little story about what was going on there in his handwriting. And this was almost lost, and we were lucky enough to stumble on it and be able to preserve it and keep it together and bring it out for people to see.
So it was unearthed, but Amy, how did it get earthed? How did it get organized and you start working on it?
Well, when John Wayne Enterprises purchased the John Wayne portion of the collection, and then Ethan wanted to keep that all together, and we were looking into how to preserve this because it was so large. It's about 100,000 images. Everyone that we talked to had said, you should talk to Laurie Kratochvil. She can help you with this, because it's so massive. Where do we start? So we reached out to Laurie.
Obi-Wan, I need your help kind of
Exactly.
thing. So, Laurie, what was your association with all this?
Well, I was living in New York, and I was working for Rolling Stone. I was there for quite a while, and I got a phone call out of nowhere, out of Newport Beach, where their office was, and it was Amy, and she explained to me that they had this archive, that they had gotten everything from his archive, darkroom equipment, tongs that he used to pull up the paper, everything from A to Z.
Yeah.
And that they were interested in talking to me about what they should do with the archive. So I went out to Newport Beach, and there was boxes, there were files, there were more boxes. And even though John, he took care of his work, and he was pretty organized, but it was a lot of different things, and we needed to kind of sort out what's the most important thing right now. Obviously with that much merchandise, you can't organize all of it. So I suggested that they pull out the top 100 pictures that they thought that we could go out and then get galleries to show it, get a resale agent for distribution to the magazines, and start having some shows and digitizing everything.
Okay. Now, Ethan, what had your organization buy this in the first place?
Well, I run a company called John Wayne Enterprises, and it preserves the name, image, and likeness of the actor John Wayne. And when I took over the company, we didn't own any photography that we could use. If we wanted to make a product that had John Wayne's photographic likeness on it, we would have to go out and license that from a third party. So it was always something that we kept an eye on to try to find some photos of John Wayne that we could own. And through this roundabout way, a woman approached us, and we didn't put much faith in the conversation, but when we went there, we realized, oh, these are terrific photos. This is a real photographer. And then I remembered him because I saw a photo that he took of me and my father, and it just triggered a childhood memory of this great guy who I remember being on the set. But when I was a kid, I didn't know if he was attached to the film or he was separate. I just didn't know. But then as we uncovered the story of the photographer and we negotiated a deal for the purchase of the John Wayne photos, a couple weeks go by and the family reaches back out and they go, we don't want to go through this with 799 other estates.
Yeah, we want to make you a deal, right?
Would you guys be interested in taking the whole collection? And so we were able to put that together, and it's kind of cool because now we can keep John Hamilton's work together. And it's, as people start to see it, you'll understand that it's pretty important because it's not only the 800 celebrities, but it's also time capsules of, in his off time he'd go to motorcycle races or bicycle races or photograph towns or cars or wagons, Western wagons. He just had all these small capsule collections inside his archive. And some of that is even more interesting to me because these are photos from my childhood era. And I was crazy for motorcycles and loved small rural towns. So it was just interesting. And in the beginning, you'd asked Laurie, how did you get to, what was that initial thing about Road and Track? How did he get you there?
I grew up in Newport Beach, and I was looking for an after-school job, and I ended up working for, it's CBS Publications now, but Road and Track and Cycle World.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with working for magazines. I just loved the immediacy of it and working on something and then seeing a finished product. And Ethan grew up in Newport Beach, and I grew up in Newport Beach. So when this whole thing came about, it just seemed absolutely right.
The office for the magazines that you did was Road and Track and Cycle World, and that was about 100 yards from a grade school that I went to. I went to a private school called Carden Hall.
Okay.
And it was literally out in the dirt when I was a kid. And all my other friends went to Newport Elementary, which is right down on the beach, and then they went to Horace Ensign Middle School. But I had to go to Carden Hall. It was a good school, but I wasn't with the guys that I ran around with when I was at home in my neighborhood. But anyway, Road and Track was a building just down from it, and I was crazy for motorcycles and cars as a little boy, and so I would stare at that building. A lot of
connections.
On the way to school and on the way home. I think Kobe Bryant bought it, and then at some point, since he's passed, a college owns that building, and they've redone it. It's an incredible building in an incredible location. It's up on a hill. It looks out over the ocean. It's just beautiful.
Okay.
But what a crazy tie-in. And then you also said you worked for Myers-Manx.
Yes, I worked for Bruce Myers, who invented the Myers-Manx, which was a dune buggy. You take bodies from Volkswagens, the engine and maybe the chassis. It was a fiberglass car, very popular.
You put that little, fiberglass body in a Volkswagen chassis, and you had a real good dune buggy.
I remember those. Amy, what were you doing? Were you kind of minding your own business at John Wayne Enterprises before all this happened?
Pretty much.
Yeah?
Yeah. I've worked for John Wayne Enterprises since 2003.
Okay.
And as Ethan mentioned, we had no photos to do any of our work. We always had to go to third parties to find photos. And then when the Hamilton family came to us and we realized that these photos are really great, we'd seen them over the years, we knew them. It just made a lot of sense to bring those on board.
What is the website for the collection, and what will people find when they go there?
JohnHamiltonCollection.com.
Okay.
There's over 100,000 images in the collection. We've scanned 30,000 so far, and we've retouched probably around 500. So you'll see the ones that we've retouched on the website.
Now, is that a painstaking process, or do you have a way to automate some of that now?
We've automated some of it. We started with the 30,000 images. We've done low-res scans just so we can get them in and have access to them quicker and do things remotely. But the process to do the restoration work, that is more involved, and you can't really automate that.
Yeah, it is pretty time-consuming. As part of this collection, you mentioned earlier there were a number of celebrities besides your dad that he photographed. Who were some of those?
Elvis, the Beatles, Paul Newman, Steve McQueen,
Michael Jackson,
Leonard Nimoy. Name a name. Just
Elizabeth Taylor,
pick a random name.
We got it.
You got it. So now, are you the people that these folks' estates call to get photos from?
Not yet.
Not yet?
But maybe at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think that would turn around.
Right now it's in the organizing, scanning, retouching, preserving, understanding what's there, and then at some point,
We do use an agency out of New York. They license the images from us, so we try to get them our images too so that it's easily found.
And what are your plans for the future for the collection?
Well, we'd like to do more shows. We've talked about a book. We want to keep scanning, try to scan all 100,000 images and get a nice database and archive.
First priority is preservation.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure it's preserved, make sure it's stored properly, make sure it's searchable. Mm-hmm. And then who knows what will happen after that. It's an important chunk of work. Like Laurie said, it was in file cabinets, it was in, most of it was in archival storage, media, whatever you want to call it. But, it's in Southern California. It's not air conditioned. It's, when we were getting those photos out, it was 105 degrees inside that little garage/office thing. So
things are in climate-controlled storage now? That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a good first step.
But if people are coming to this show because they're interested in architecture and they want to do really neat things in their home and they want to find unique pieces, these photographs are incredibly unique, incredibly stylish. If you want handsome and masculine, you've got it. If you want beautiful and feminine, you've got it. If you want playful, you've got it. If you want avant-garde, you've got it. It's an incredible collection for this.
You've got Steve McQueen staring you in the eyes, right?
Who was a Marine.
Yeah.
Did his service, came back, went to the LA Photography Institute on the GI Bill.
Oh, yeah.
His first film job is The Searchers for John Ford and John Wayne.
Yeah.
And he isn't kicked off the set immediately. So evidently they liked him. He was a great guy, and he had a really low-key but prolific career.
And amazing access.
His work is very unique. You'll see a lot of actors photographed on the set or posing or smiling, but you're not seeing that person. What John Hamilton did was he saw the personality of the person in these locations. But, if he's shooting John Wayne, he's not shooting Rooster Cogburn. He's shooting John Wayne playing with his kid on the side of the set, you know? Or Steve McQueen taking a break and putting around on his motorcycle. Or Paul Newman puffing on a cigar, reading the script, laying on the floor in the shade. Bridget Bardot sitting in a director's chair with her boots off in the middle of a stream because it's so hot she's got her feet in the water while they're filming a Western. Incredible subjects.
A more genuine situation.
Yeah.
And these photographs have been buried for 30 years. He was putting them out there when he was alive, but then they kind of just went in boxes and sat. And it was very interesting because when I started working for the John Hamilton collection, I was trying to find connections where we could identify. And all of a sudden, I found a book on John done by Bruce Weber, contemporary photographer.
Yeah.
And that was really wonderful because we could bring the fact that Bruce had touted him into the archive, and so we brought it up to a contemporary level.
When I look at this, I think of somebody, getting a fine art print in their home, and it's something that they cherish, and it's unique. And I'm so excited to be part of it.
The website is johnhamiltoncollection.com. Ethan, Amy, Laurie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You just heard George talking with Ethan Wayne, Laurie Kratochvil, and Amy Shepard.
At this year's Modernism Week, paint company Dunn-Edwards featured the latest book by the artist Shag, a.k.a. Josh Agel. The artist known to many as a symbol of mid-century modern cool. and Dunn-Edwards head colorist Sara McClean was there to talk about the inspiration of color. With a background of marketing and interior design, Sara has worked in the design industry for more than 25 years. As the color and designs trend analyst for Dunn-Edwards, she researches and develops the company's yearly forecast and oversees the Color of the Year program. She also edits and writes for the Dunn-Edwards blog, Specs and Spaces. Now we go poolside to talk with Sara McClean. Sara, I don't see the profession colorist very often on LinkedIn. And you are one.
Yes,
What is that all about?
It is a very niche profession, and what it is we are experts in the world of color, and there's multiple industries involved, but my world involves paint, architectural coating, so that's where I come in, and really, it's that focus on a color system, if you will. Every industry has one, auto manufacturers to paint companies. And we focus on creating color, naming color through the project management of the color and the entire life cycle of it. So it's a very unique situation, a very unique job.
Is this like those people who get hired for their nose because they can smell like 1,000 different scents, right?
It is. If you have a nose for something or an eye for something, it's one of those unique jobs that people always want to talk to you about and have an interest in. And you kind of either you gain experience through it, but some people are just naturally attuned to it.
Yeah.
So I have an eye more for color. I love the perfumes and stuff, but they wouldn't hire me for for smelling coffee or that type of thing.
Wine.
So wine, yeah. I do although I do have a nose for wine. I will say that.
Okay, all right, good.
I do like what I like. But yeah, it's a profession and a career that it kind of came to me accidentally. I have a background in marketing and interior design, and this career step came to me close to 17 years ago, and it was
one dark and stormy night.
I looked on monster.com, and Dunn-Edwards was looking for somebody with a background in marketing and interior design, and the whole job was going to focus on their color program. So, well, that's intriguing. So why don't I give it a try? And they hired me, luckily.
Yeah.
And so through years of skill building and then also just having a bit of a natural eye, it does help to have an artistic background, a fine arts background. And so I'm a hobbyist that way. But I grew up around art all the time and the construction trade. So my dad was a carpenter. My mom is a hobbyist in the fine arts. I have uncles and aunts that are professors at different states doing fine arts and oil paintings and acrylics, watercolors. And so it's something I've always been around. And when you kind of see it, I think the fine artists are the truest colorists. So they may not have the profession of what I do, but they are the ones that really hone in and have that truest sense of color acumen.
So for the average person who knows absolutely nothing about how color gets done, like at what point are you in the process? Like, does Dunn-Edwards make a color and then you name it? Or do you do some secret R&D somewhere and suggest a color that they go and manufacture?
So I actually do all the research on it, and then I can bring in anything. So for our historic colors that we have, I'll bring in maybe historic wall covering or paint chip samples, spindles, what have you. And then I work with the color lab that helps develop the colors. They read it on a spectrophotometer, piece of equipment that actually reads it mathematically.
That's what's in Home Depot, right? When I take in a sample, they're putting in a spectrometer to match it?
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Exactly, but much more in a lab environment.
You have the bigger spectrometer.
Yeah, much stronger,
yes.
More accurate. And then what they do is they create what we call drawdowns. So they're just swatches of paint on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. And then I go and take a look at it, approve it or not, or maybe a little more red, a little more yellow. So we tweak it enough to where it's like, that's the color we want. So from there, if it's approved, then yes, I do name the color, create a system for it, and that includes numbering the system, and that helps the customer and the painting contractor look for the color if they don't remember the color name. So, but customers typically remember the color name. Painting contractors typically probably will use the color numbers, but in a sense, in the back, you have to have both at the tint center or the store to be able to locate it and create it.
What is the process of naming these things? I mean, I see most colors have names like subdivisions, like Woodside Green. Do you have any titles like Bad Life Decisions or things like that? Any funny ones?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I like naming colors with unique, quirky sensibility.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. I think you can only name a shade of red so many different times, right? You do want your basics, like a middle gray and dark gray, so people understand these are the neutrals. But then if you want something a little quirkier, I just named, I'm coming out with some new grays and browns, and that's really in reference to field requests for additional neutrals for them. But one of them is, I always get the question, is this a grayish, is this not? And so one of my colors is, yes, it's grayish.
Oh,
like, don't ask me.
Wow.
It's great.
That's great.
Yeah. And then front door colors launched last year. I had a lot of fun with that. And, there's one Ready for Fun, and RED-Y for fun.
Right.
And Candy Crush, and you have some fun with that. Many years ago, I launched a collection called Then, Now, and Forever, and it had a combination of historic and trending colors, and I had a lot of fun with those. So it was anything from Sunny Side Up, so it's a yellow, or Mow the Lawn, which is a green.
Yeah.
So I like phrasing more than just one name for a color, because those have been used. So I want to
like I remember Crayola was ochre, I think.
Yeah.
Right? It's like no one knew what the hell that color was exactly.
Right.
It's the crayon you threw away in the 64 crayon box.
Yes. You want to have this idea of it creating its own personality, its own storyline. So when I do create the name, then I create a little description behind it, what's it's inspired by, and little phrasing. And, I'll use anything from Shakespeare to more modern day books I love to read. So I'm always taking notes, and it's a lot of fun just to create names.
Now, when I'm using my computer and I pull up a color palette, I think I'm getting this right. I think it gives me a number from 1 to 64,000 or something. I mean, there's a certain number of these colors that are out there, right?
Yeah. For the human eye, you can see about 65,000 colors.
Okay.
There's millions of unique combinations, though. It's really unlimited, but it's what the human eye can see. For a color system, such as a paint color system, I'm never going to give you 65,000 colors to look at. That is just too much for too many choices, right? There's just no way you can get to that point. And so for us, right now we're a little over 2006. We're probably about 2050 right now. So with some of the upcoming collections coming out, we're probably going to hit about 3,500, and that's still overwhelming. So from there, I do like to tailor it down into those smaller capsule collections, color cards, reference points on social media, where you can just tap it down a little bit in more bite-size information for people who aren't comfortable with color. And so that is part of what I do as well.
Yeah, so who's the most resistant to color? Who are the crankiest people about color?
Oh, crankiest people about color. I would say people who just want the basic white. I don't want any color. I don't want anything, and it has to match the exact, say, Swiss coffee that I've had for 40 years ago. The problem with that is the technology in paint has changed over the years, so you're never going to really get super close. Well, you're going to get close, but not exact. That one can be a little tough. wanting them to modernize a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also exteriors.
Is it usually the husband that has this problem?
It's a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
I would say more than anything, it's the husband that
Yeah.
that doesn't care, just wants the job done.
Right. Yeah. Just paint it.
Just paint it, please. I don't want this on my list anymore. I don't want to hear about it ever again. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, exteriors are another tough situation. And I wouldn't say they're cranky, but it does cause more angst because it is more expensive. You're not necessarily going to paint an entire exterior home yourself.
Right.
It is quite cumbersome. You can paint the front door, you can paint the shutters, you can paint some of the trim if you don't have to climb a ladder all the time. But that's where there's that extra, like, am I going to get this wrong? And that's where, we come in and help narrow down the selections and get to that point where you're very comfortable with it.
So my wife and I built a house about 12 years ago, and we had it painted dark gray with one of your competitors. And in the North Carolina sun, which is not nearly as intense as the Palm Springs sun, after a while it started bubbling up and weird things happening, and they were very good. They eventually came out and redid those spots. But my question is, how do you deal with paint and intense temperatures? I mean, it gets to be 115,
Yes.
120 here in
Yes.
Palm Springs. So how does the paint deal with that?
So we are manufactured in the Southwest. We've been in Los Angeles since 1925.
Yeah.
And so we do formulate our paints for Southwest extreme conditions. And at the top of our offices, we have these test panels, if you will. We paint a bunch of panels and just look at the durability of a variety of paint products and see how long they will last. So we do test these out. And so, if something is failing at, say, 300 hours, you want it to, last 5,000 or more. The goal is to make the durability of the paint last at least 5 years. Now,
Yeah.
It also depends on the color, I will say that. So, if you're using very bright, vivid colors here, which you see a lot here, one thing we tell them, customers, is just be aware of it. It will be some maintenance issue. You're going to want to paint a little sooner than you typically would in maybe a coastal environment or just where it's not facing the sun.
Right.
So we encourage the use of any color, but we just want people to be aware that in these extreme conditions, the more muted tones, that's why you see a lot of the sandstone color coming through. But in recent years, you do see more of the extreme color.
Yeah.
You look down at some of the hotels that are using bright pastels and the brights, but they know that they do have probably a paint maintenance budget that they will have to eventually repaint a little sooner
In a dark color?
than a dark color or a mid-tone range, a mid-tone value, a muted value color that by its innate nature going to last a little longer.
So I know if you tell me this, you might have to kill me, but what do you put in the paint to make it more durable? I mean, what are the things that are improving the whole paint technology now?
I always call it like a recipe. For each product has a recipe. So if you have, it's a certain number of ingredients, our colorant system to resin technologies to some solvents, and so you want to, it's a right combination for a specific use. So I don't have a specific name for use for a specific particular ingredient because each one is so different in what you're looking for. So for example, for exteriors, you're probably looking for more durability and weather resistance.
Right.
Where interior products, you're looking for more scrubbable resistance, less burnishing. So if you scrub a wall and you see a bright, shiny mark, you don't necessarily want that because touch-up can be not fun. So that's where the recipe, if you will, ties into that unique product and color, maybe even sheen level. So, do you want flat finishes are a little harder to keep clean because they absorb the light on the exteriors. They capture the dirt pickup a little more than if you do a higher sheen where, power washing, you can kind of scrubs off a little easier.
But are they starting to inject new ingredients into these things to make them better? Are we getting artificial intelligence telling us how to formulate the microbes? I mean, I want to know the future here.
There's always something new scientifically coming up. It's your typical cast of paint ingredients, the pigments, the solvents, the resin technologies that get better and better and slightly better. But is there something brand new and on the horizon that's going to change the world? Not necessarily. It's an older technology. I think the last big leap of change, at least for this area, is when California, we're the strictest area in the nation in terms of regulations,
yes,
and especially LA County. And so we had to reformulate all of our oil-based paint to water-based technologies. And we did have some water-based, but the market still at the time was mostly oil.
Yeah.
The initial products that came out wouldn't dry. The technology hadn't caught up to the regulation. And that's where you're told to do something before the world is ready. Yeah. And so it took a long transition time to be able to come out with products that were getting better, not quite to the oil-based strength, then finally to the oil-based strength. And now finally what you're seeing is many of the water-based products are at par and better than the oil-based products. But it takes that time, and it's not necessarily brand new leaps and bounds of scientific discovery, but just tweaks in the current ingredients that help increase that durability, that that resistance to what's happening. And even with oil, one downside to that was always the color would yellow a bit over time. But with water-based, having that technology, you don't have to necessarily worry about that now. So you're on par with that.
I remember growing up, each year there were articles, usually in January, February, about what was going to be the color of the year. It was announced like it was going to be, some festival, and it would have a name, and there would be all these photos of things in that color, clothing, fixtures, paint, artwork in the color, carpeting, I think in the 70s it was chartreuse.
Oh, yes.
Which we always called pukey, when
Very
we were
true.
kids.
Well, what is that?
But it seems to me now, as a person who knows nothing about this, that it's more than once a year. It seems to change a little more rapidly. Is that true?
Most companies will announce a color of the year, including us, once a year.
Okay.
So I tend to announce every fall for the following year. So 2023 is out. 2024, I will announce this fall what the following year will bring. And every company is slightly different these days. You'll find that while maybe some of our base research is similar, our influences are different, and that could be anything from where we're located in the world to who we're inspired by at the time.
Right.
But the research for us takes on a year-round bent, and I'm researching year-round, and we come out with our color trend reports the summer prior.
Okay.
So in June, I'll come out with 2024 color trends. Out of that trends reference, that's where I pull that color of the year from. And what it is it's that consistent research, that confirmation of the research to get to that pinnacle color that is a symbol of something more. So I'm not necessarily looking at just the fashion world. It used to be where you looked at, fashion was always first. Automotive was years ahead because they had to be, and it took so much money and time to create that color. But overall, there were a few tastemakers who would just, this is it, and you must follow. And that was many years ago. But now people are so personalized with their decisions. The world is so different. You look at anything from generational changes, socioeconomic changes, luxury, travel trends, food trends, all of that to come up with a color. So I see, at least through the paint industry, we all announce a color of the year once a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever announced a color of the year and somebody else has done something very similar and you're going, damn you, Sherwin-Williams?
Yes, it's interesting. You always wonder what somebody else is up to, especially in your industry.
Yeah.
And not that you're necessarily competing against them, but you are interested in what they're inspired by. And I know many of the people in the other industries. We see each other at least once a year for different conferences.
There's an association of colorists, right?
There is a color marketing group.
Color marketing group, okay.
Yeah, we meet once a year to look at future forecasts 2-3 years in advance. And
do you meet in like an abandoned army base with no color and try to fix it up?
We actually go to a resort, take it over, and it's a multi-day conference, and we discuss our findings, our thoughts, what inspirations we find, what do we think is coming up, what is our future cast, what do we see far off in the future, and we look at anything from 2 years out to, we look at a decade and further out, just kind of a what-if situation. And that's really the futurist forecast and just what's going to happen in the world. And that's where you just kind of, and some of this you do kind of know. And in the world of technology and science, certain things are cyclical and going to come up, so you can kind of have some fun. And, we all know that AI is more and more within our everyday world. What will that look like? We know that cars are self-driving at this point. We don't necessarily trust that, but we know it's going. The world is going to be the 1960s Jetsons.
Right.
Cartoon, you can kind of see those inklings, and it's that futurist from there. But yes, going back to seeing what all the other competitors look at, some years we are very similar, and it's we all probably strike that similar chord with our inspiration. Other years we're completely different. We may have a similar grounding influence, but the end color says something completely different.
Right. Now, with 3D printing of houses, is there such a thing yet as 3D painting? Is there a robot that will, paint the exterior of my house yet?
They're probably working on it, I'm sure, in some MIT lab somewhere. Yeah. But for the everyday use, not yet. I will say in the world of color, what you're starting to see is unusual, different colors that you normally probably wouldn't have used in the past. You think about these little plastic chips that are going to create whatever that new piece is, the home or a part. And that melting of that plastic to create that new part, these are newer colors that you normally wouldn't put in a palette before.
Yeah.
But the eye will see more of that, get more comfortable with that. That'll in turn come into more paint palettes, if you will. And maybe, you never know, paint itself may take a turn. And at that point, what does that look like? Paint's been around for eons, really. I mean, since the beginning of time, we've been painting cave walls. So will this medium ever go away? I don't think so, but it can start taking a life of its own for sure.
Your 2023 color was Terra Rosa?
Correct, yes.
Which sounds like it would be good here on Earth as well as painting something on the moon, right?
That's right. It's
your moon home could be done in Terra Rosa.
Exactly. Go take it to Mars. In researching these colors of the year, I always ensure that we have a sound basis of research to tell media, customers why we chose what we chose. And so, one of the several reasons we chose Terra Rosa, one, it's a grounding hue. People are still feeling anxious. But we're also
What is the most anxiety-producing hue? I have to ask that.
anxiety-producing.
Yeah, like really disturbing color.
It's some sort of citrus, almost a chartreuse, I
Really?
would say, because people just it has a little bit of a zing, a little bit of an energy. It's not necessarily a calming color. When it's used in the appropriate way, it's a beautiful color. But most people kind of shy away from it on a regular basis. It just, in yellows in general, the brighter ones just take on, it's hard on the eyes after a while.
Yeah, particularly with a lot of light.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So tending to stay away from that. But others, that's probably the most anxiety-inducing one.
And again, when are you going to release the 2024 winter color of the year for your company? This fall.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping by and talking with me about color.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me.
That was George talking with Dunn-Edwards colorist Sara McClean.
Paging Dr. Pocock. Paging Dr. Pocock. Code blue in the ER. We need 50 cc saline. Start an IV line. Stat. One day you'll be hearing all that in a hospital somewhere, as today's musical guest is in med school and will soon be bringing her dulcet tones to healthcare. Wouldn't it be great if after a heart attack, this knowledgeable, talented doc broke into song as you come out of anesthesia in the ER? Very dreamy, but I digress.
Pianist, singer, and composer Ariel Pocock released her first jazz album as a sophomore in college. A graduate of the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami.
Go Hurricanes!
She grew up in Seattle, Washington, with parents who were classical pianists and orchestra managers. Now, based in Hillsborough, North Carolina, she has worked as a jazz piano professor at UNC Greensboro and East Carolina University.
Go Pirates!
Her first album was Touchstone, released by Just in Time Records in 2015. Another album followed in 2017, Living in Twilight, and her latest release, with saxophonist Chad Eby, is titled BFFs. Welcome, Ariel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Ariel, you had success as a jazz pianist early, but that first album, when you were still in college, wasn't entirely smooth sailing. What was that like?
Yeah. So that first album, basically, while I was a freshman in college, I was approached by Verve Records, which I at first thought I was getting scammed or something when I got the email.
This was
But I was
Verve
approached by
Records?
someone. Yeah,
Verve,
Records.
the big
jazz
label.
Yeah, the big one. And they said, well, we want to sign a new jazz singer, and we think you're just a fit. And I was 18. I had no idea what I was getting into, so I said, sure. And I signed all the contracts, and they flew me to London, and I played at Ronnie Scott's, and it was this whole whirlwind thing.
Wow.
And long story short, after I was paid the advance, the branch that I was working with was closed down, and everybody was reassigned. So that contract ended, but I was able to just keep the advance and make the record that I had slotted anyways with Matt Pearson. And obviously the great thing about that was I was able to afford the heavy hitters. So I was able to get Larry Grenadier and Eric Harlan and Julian Lage on that album.
Wow.
So that was quite an adventure for me as you said, a sophomore in college, to be able to play with that caliber of talent on my freshman release. So yeah, it was quite an adventure for me.
And how did you wind up in North Carolina?
After I finished college down in Miami, my folks had moved up here just for work. And so, as one does when you are 23 and you don't know what to do, I just moved home and figured I'd figure it out. And I mostly did. I love North Carolina. I'm very grateful we ended up here. It's been such a great community for me.
Everybody does. They're all moving here.
Yeah, I know. It's the new hotspot.
This next song was written by Jimmy McHugh and Dorothy Fields in 1930. It immediately became a hit among jazz performers, and over the last 90 years has been recorded by Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie and Stan Getz, Aretha Franklin, Nina Simone, Willie Nelson, Diana Krall, Regis Philbin, and even Frank Stallone, Sylvester's brother. Here's Ariel with Exactly Like You.
I know why I've waited, know why I've been blue. I prayed each night for someone exactly like you. Why should we spend money on a show or two? No one plays those love scenes exactly like you. You make me feel so grand. I wanna give the world to you. You seem to understand every foolish little dream I'm dreaming, every scheme I'm scheming. I know why my mother taught me to be true. It's because she meant me for someone exactly like you. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. I know why I've waited, I know why I've been blue. I prayed each night for someone exactly like you. I know why my mother taught me to be true. She meant me for someone exactly like you. You make me feel so grand. I wanna give the world to you. You seem to understand every foolish little dream I'm dreaming, every scheme I'm scheming. I know why my mother taught me to be true. 'Cause she meant me for someone. She meant me for someone. She meant me for someone exactly like you. Exactly like you. Exactly like you.
You give me fever.
You can listen to Tom Giles' best hits
Yeah.
on his CD coming out soon.
That's great.
It is really great. Who does the percussion for that, Ariel?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
That's Eric Harland.
Okay.
It's great. Yeah.
That's a fun
That
song.
was a very fun one to record.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Ariel, you've once said it's ridiculous that jazz musicians often only want to play from this book of 500 standards, and if you play a pop tune, you're a crossover sellout.
Did I say that?
I think you
Sounds
did.
Like something I'd say.
I think you did.
I believe you. Right.
So it's great that you've put your own styling on some of these songs.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I'm still trying to think about what Regis Philbin would have sounded like singing exactly like you.
Or Frank
I'll have to
Stallone,
check that
right?
out. Yeah, right.
Now, besides singing professionally, semi-professionally, you're also in a cool church band?
I was. Unfortunately, my studies do not leave me a whole lot of time for those kind of things anymore. But
Okay.
that was such a great experience musically. It's challenging in a whole different way than playing jazz or classical, just having to sit down and learn it all by ear. But yeah, I really cherish my time. I did that for about 3 years with those musicians. But I think all musicians should have the opportunity to do that. It really opens your ears in a completely different way.
It's so fantastic now. If you go to some of these mega churches in the area, they have almost full orchestras.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a really professional production for sure.
This next song is one of my favorites first recorded and published in 1934, with music and lyrics by Ray Noble. Teen star Ricky Nelson, son of Ozzie and Harriet, did a rock and roll version, and Natalie Cole released her version in 1992. It's been covered by her dad, Nat King Cole, Michael Bublé, Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra, and past podcast guest Stacey Kent. Here's Ariel with The Very Thought of You.
The very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. I'm living in a kind of daydream. I'm as happy as a queen, and foolish though it may seem to me, that's everything. The mere idea of you, the longing here for you. You'll never know how slow the moments go till I'm near to you. I see your face in every flower. I see your eyes in stars above. It's just the thought of you, the very thought of you, my love. The very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. I'm living in a kind of daydream. I'm as happy as a queen, and foolish though it may seem to me, that's everything. The mere idea of you, the longing here for you. You'll never know how slow The moments go till I'm near to you. I see your face in every flower, your eyes and stars above. It's just the thought of you, the very thought of you, my love, my love.
That's gorgeous. That is really gorgeous.
Thank you. Thanks. That's a really fun one to perform.
I went to your webpage under performances and it's blank. Is there any time between anatomy and physiology to do a few concerts?
Well, I think over the summer I'll have a couple things at the Sharp 9 Jazz Gallery in Durham with some of my musical friends and collaborators. So I'm looking forward to that. I should have a couple things in like August that'll be on the books, and some things with Chad Eby as well.
So what's the place again in Durham? I didn't catch it.
It's called the Sharp 9 Jazz Gallery. It's really wonderful. It's in Durham.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have to say it's my favorite place I've played anywhere. It's just top notch, and it's run by a guy named Dave Finucane, who is a wonderful saxophonist himself and has just done an amazing job curating a concert series there. So they have shows 3 or 4 times a week, pretty much all through the year. So I encourage your listeners to check it out if they're in the area. Yeah, Al plays there. I'm sure some of the other guests have played there too. So that's a great spot.
So how is medical school going?
Well, I'm not in medical school yet. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll start medical school next year.
Okay.
I'm getting ready to take my big test, so I'm
it's
just studying.
Gonna be going.
Yeah, it's gonna be going. It's gonna be going. But
What do you want to specialize in?
I want to be a family doc ultimately. So I like talking to people. It's kind of why I liked teaching so much too. Is I really liked the one-on-one. So I think there's some overlap in the Venn diagram with music and medicine for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have toured, I think, with one of our other past podcast guests, Haley Lauren.
Yeah, Haley. She is just so cool.
And I last saw, I think you performed together in Cleveland before the pandemic?
Yeah, I think that probably would have been the last one. We did a couple really fun things. She took me to Hong Kong and Taipei, and we've been in Canada together. But yeah, she is just such a ray of sunshine, and her bands are always really fun. So I do really miss that. But we're still in touch, and she seems to be doing great kind of post-pandemic, getting back out there. And I've always really loved working with singers. As a singer myself, getting to accompany a great singer is such a treat for me. So really enjoy that.
Well, I would love to see the two of you perform anywhere. I'll have to keep on your list.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can find more about Ariel at arielpocock.com. That's ArielPocock.com. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. Want to go with us to Modernism Week in February 2024? Just email me at george@usmodernist.org. Okay, Tom, wrap us up.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to our past shows, discover documentation of 20,000 significant modernist houses, and access 4.1 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Kelly Policelli researched over 40 guests for our Modernism Week interviews. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I will be back in 2 weeks with another Looking at the Mountains edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.